Hi,
Hey,
how are you?
I
Oh,
am good. Happy Wednesday.
happy Wednesday. I was going to put my fancy background on. Look,
Nice. See where you walk in the morning.
I'm a bit dressed down today, Eileen. Sorry, because I'm doing all of my work from home. I have Zooms all day long. And it's nice to see you, but I
Nice.
hope you don't mind. I'm a little less formal. And this is a picture from one of my walks with the dog. Have I shown you this already? You've seen this before. Okay.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah, it was a frosty morning in January or early February, and walking the dog and seeing the sun breaking through the trees, which I love. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm a little anxious about what's gonna happen with Medicare and Social Security, but otherwise actually doing pretty well.
And I remember you were there at meditation this morning. I was saying that my way of handling that is to pray the serenity prayer,
Hmm.
to recognize that there are things out of my control. There are things that are in my control, and I've got to know the difference. So, yeah, it's on my
It
mind.
it made a good meditation mantra because I took serenity. Um, let's see, got here, Miss Serenity, accept, courage, and wisdom, and made that
Oh,
my
yeah,
mantra.
accept courage and wisdom.
Yeah,
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
yeah,
Accept, courage, wisdom.
yeah,
I love that. Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Um, well, let us go to our reading for today. I will share my screen. It is the last Sunday after the Epiphany, the last Sunday before Lent, and by tradition, we always have the story of the Transfiguration on the last Sunday before Lent, which I like. But the compilers of our bulletins thought I would do the thing that I always do, which is to leave out the extra bit. But I'm contemplating putting in the extra bit, and I kind of want to read it all with you and reflect on it a little bit as I make that decision, Eileen. Is that okay?
That's fine. Can we make it just a little bigger?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, I've done that, but is it readable now?
Yes,
I made it too big and it
that's
won't.
fine. There,
Can you fit it on one? You can see it on one screen on your computer?
I can.
Okay, let's start. Um, I'll read the first bit, you read the second bit, okay, where it breaks with a paragraph mark.
Okay.
Jesus took with him, it's Luke 9:28 to 43a. Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly, they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, is it good? It is good for us to be here. Let us make three dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him. When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. On the next day, oh, no, this is you.
On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then, a man from the crowd shouted, Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He is my only child. Suddenly, a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks. It convulses him until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. While he was coming, the demon dashed him to the ground in convulsions. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God.
Eileen, does a word or a phrase jump out and speak to you?
Terrified as they entered the cloud.
On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain. Okay, I'm going to read this again, and I want us to be mindful that it's the last Sunday before Lent. We're about to go into that slightly darker period of thoughtful preparation for Easter. And we are, in this text, going up to the mountaintop to see Jesus transformed in light. And then the next moment, diving down the other side of the mountain into the darkness of a difficult situation. And I want to invite you, Eileen, to think about moments when you've been through that cycle. The mountaintop experience followed by diving down into the valley afterwards. Is that okay? So let me read it one more time. Jesus took with him Peter, John, and James. Oh my goodness, this went wrong. Sorry, my computer keeps on trying to do that when I move windows. It like decides to resize them for me. Okay, Jesus took with him Peter, John, and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep. But since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him. When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then a man from the crowd shouted, Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He is my only child. Suddenly a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks. It convulses him, and he foams at the mouth. It mauls him, and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. While he was coming, the demon dashed him to the ground in convulsions. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to... Oh, where did my chat go? Oh, it's too long. 1 second. Oh, that's annoying. It's too long by like 1 sentence. I'm going to put it into the chat. You get it in the chat there?
Let's see. Yes.
Okay, and I've stopped sharing it so we can see each other a bit easier. What do you think, Eileen?
I think I would not like to be a disciple and have Jesus yell at me that I am what exactly does he say? Uh,
You faithless and perverse
yes,
generation,
faithful
how
and
much longer must I be with you and bear with you? I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I get it. Like, he's grumpy.
yeah.
And he's like, they failed to cast the demon out, and like, oh my goodness, like, but yeah, I want to name that moment in the context of he just took James and Peter and John up to the mountaintop and they saw him transfigured in front of them. They saw him having conversations with heavenly beings and they saw this amazing revelation of God in the person of Jesus. And he's like, oh, that's so good. Then he comes down the mountain and he's like, is it all still a mess? And it kind of is. Like it's all still a mess. And like the world is all still a mess today. And I had this feeling a little bit this week because last weekend um we had the annual meeting, yeah, and
Mhm.
I've been working on it for a while and we were doing, the election of the new officers and the financial presentation. And then I wanted to do this vision presentation with Megan and Alex um and me. And Megan was presenting on how we were doing the strategic plan. And Alex was presenting on what the future of church looks like, and I was presenting on the capital campaign and how the capital campaign dovetails in with the future of church. And I'm realizing you weren't there, Eileen, because you weren't able to come on Sunday, were you?
Yeah, I was coughing with a cold and I didn't want to come, spread
Yeah.
it around.
Well, tomorrow in the e-news, we are going to put the video of the annual meeting in the e-news.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
so we'll be able to share that with you all. And I'll put the slide deck in there as well. Um, but it was this really high and the presentation went really well and everyone listened and they liked it. And I announced that I was going on sabbatical, which is coming up. But I also said, I also people recognize that, there's Megan and there's Alex and there's Pam as the senior warden, great leaders that are going to lead us through the sabbatical. So there's this kind of sense of relief and anxiety draining away because the events happened and you're on the mountaintop a little bit and like it's like, oh, this big set of things has happened and the whole year's presentation has taken place and people are pleased with it and the dinner went really well. And then on Monday, I had my naturalization process, which was again a 7-month process, but actually was a 14-year process, coming to a conclusion. And I swore the oath and became an American. And then I was like, oh, what now? Like, these are two big things I've been working for ages, and like they're done. And like, can we take a break? But then Tuesday rolled around, and it was let's discuss the cathedral's approach in case ICE comes to the door and asks to search for undocumented immigrants in the door of the church. And
Mhm.
we are aware that we might not be the kind of church that might get that kind of action against us, but maybe we are. But the diocese has asked us to think about a policy in case it does happen because of some federal government regulation changes around
Mhm.
searches around sensitive places. So I was kind of like, don't I get an extra day to like enjoy like naturalization and the annual meeting? Do we have to really get into this really difficult subject? Um, but that's the way of things. And I kind of like the fact that Jesus gets annoyed um, because it reminds me of his humanity. It's like we were
Exactly.
just on the mountain and you saw that I was talking to Moses and Elijah, and now you can't cast out a simple demon. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just waxed lyrical for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me think, they are seeing, let me move my chat where I can see it. It says they are seeing Jesus talking with it's Elijah and anyway, they see Jesus talking with these
Moses and
Moses and
Elijah.
Elijah and saying, oh, let's, make the dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. And Jesus had already told them, I'm the Son of God. And it's like, so now you kind of want to do something because you see Moses and Elijah, like
All
we're
right.
you're not really sure about me, but now you are. Okay, well, fine. And then they couldn't cast him out. He's like, well, you don't even know who I am, and now you can't cast out demons, so
Yeah.
Was
He's kind of frustrated.
yeah.
I read that differently. I hear what you're saying about, oh, like Moses and Elijah come along and it's all great and you want to build a thing, but
Yeah.
like you were falling asleep when it was just me. I'm pretty impressive too. But I appreciate your reading of that, but I also kind of think it's wonderful that like Peter's like we're on a mountaintop. It's very spiritual. It's very kind of woo. And Moses and Elijah here, let's stay here forever. Let's
Mhm.
just stay here. Um, which is the thing that I often say about the Mount of Transfiguration. The disciples were like, this is it. This is like heaven. But it's not heaven. This is only a foretaste of heaven. This is a glimpse of what is to come. There's still a lot of difficult work to be done. And Jesus is like, well, he doesn't say anything, but it's like, no, we're not staying on the mountaintop. We're going back down. But I think even with, you've got Peter's kind of frustration that they can't stay on the mountaintop, or Peter's excitement at Jesus, Elijah, and Moses being on the mountaintop and wanting to stay on the mountaintop, and then realizing you can't stay on the mountaintop. You've got to go down into the valley where there is a demon and there's darkness and there's difficulty to deal
Mhm.
with. And then there's like Jesus, the flip side of Peter's feeling of wanting to stay on the mountaintop. I feel like Peter or Jesus might be thinking, yep, I'd have liked to have stayed on the mountaintop too. Um, but actually, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed, but I've got to come down into the valley and deal with the darkness because that's why I came. And there's a little bit, I think, in this whole cycle of things in life right now where we're like, the world feels a bit dark. I need a mountaintop experience. I need to see Jesus. I need to see God. I need to have a vision of God. And we should do that, but be prepared at the end of having the vision to dig back into the dirt, um,
Mhm.
and to get on with the things that are happening. And it's difficult, but it's helpful for me to be reminded of that.
And in with that, in last week's reading, where Jesus told Peter to come out, go into the deep water and drop your nets. And it's like, it's another time when he's inviting him into a dark place. It's deep water. We don't know what we're going to find. We don't know what's going to happen, but I want you to drop everything into it.
Mhm.
And here again, he's like, okay, we're going to come down from this mountain. We're going to go work with some deep things. We don't know what the outcome is going to be, but I want you to walk into this, symbolically walk into this darkness with me. And it
Mhm.
makes me wonder about the times when I'm like, no, I'm not walking into that darkness with you. I'm going to stay up here where there's sheep and flowers and it's fluffy. And um, it's so I've been thinking all week about this. And even with this, it's like, what am what am I missing in my experience of the divine when I'm not willing to walk into a dark place? And it doesn't have to mean that it's like something horrible and terrible, but it's just something I'm unfamiliar with or I'm concerned, might be uncomfortable. But I have no proof that it will be. It's just fear. And
Oh my goodness, Eileen, you just said so much there. Um, I was going in a different direction in my mind, but you like stopped me, it, like arrested me because that's exactly the feeling I have before I start like a meditation or a period of prayer, which is like, I don't really want to do this. Like, there's some dark stuff in my heart and my soul that I've got to look at. I don't really want to go there. I'd rather avoid it. It's a fear of entering into prayer, even. Um, and then I know that when I go walk the dog and pray, or I sit and meditate and pray, I will encounter the darkness and the difficulty, but I'll also do it in the company of Jesus, and he will say, yeah, there is some difficult stuff here, but it's okay. You're okay. I love you. I'm with you.
Mhm.
So then when you've done it and you've worked through the darkness, it's wonderful and you feel kind of more whole and saved and, you know, uh, in one piece again. But then the next time I get to, oh, like, I'm meant to go and pray now. Like, do I really want to do that? It's dark and dingy and difficult. taking a kind of a long, hard look at my soul. And it's like, do it anyway, because it will help you grow. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's like it's made me think, what have I been missing? If in my spiritual development or my personal development or, interacting with people. I mean, it just kind of goes into everything. So I appreciate this as a reminder of no, you're always going to be held, you're always going to be loved, you're always going to be accepted. So let's walk together into this. Oh, you've frozen a little bit, Matthew.
Let's go meet God. Let's go see God. Yeah.
Okay, you're good now.
Did I? Am I back?
Your voice is,
It
but your
says my
picture
connection is
is.
unstable. It's been being funny.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. My
It's all right.
connection's been coming and going all day. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
You can still hear me?
Yes.
Um, I was gonna say, it's interesting that Jesus is annoyed because they don't manage to cast the demon out,
Mhm.
and he does it anyway. And it made me think about the fact that sometimes we're
You're frozen.
involved in the mission of God. Um, and that oh, I don't know what's going on. Let me try turning my video off
Okay.
and seeing if is that any better?
Your voice is still in and out. You're still out.
I don't know what to do, Eileen.
That's okay. Let's
Wait
just give
one
it a
second. Let me
try.
try something. I'm gonna try a
Okay.
clever thing. I'm trying some clever science. Can you hear me right now?
Yes, I can hear you right
Okay, one second.
now. Enter your password.
Oh, I'm gonna try and call 66.
To Zoom, enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. Are in the meeting now. There are 2 participants.
Hello.
So I can see you.
Okay, I've got to do something. Hello?
I can hear you.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Well, I'm just on my phone and I left the meeting because I was creating feedback. But if you can still hear me, that means I'm still in the meeting technically.
Yes.
Okay. So where did we get to?
Well, we were talking about the we were talking about sort of the benefits of walking into areas that we think will be difficult, and taking it into our prayer and into our meditation.
Oh, that's right. And I was saying I quite like the fact that Jesus was annoyed, but he still did the right thing anyway. He still cast out the demon.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes anxiety can be present in our church systems
but we should still try and draw people back to God, and indeed draw ourselves back to God as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really like that, because I do feel anxiety in church systems, and then you kind of could wonder to yourself, well, maybe we're all bad Christians because we're feeling anxious and we're trying to serve God. But I'm like, no, we're humans and we are normal and we are trying to serve God, and there's going to be some anxiety and some darkness in the system, but we try and do the right thing anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's we all have our big egos, and I might want to do something one way and think that's the best way, and someone else wants to do it their way, and then one of us has to back down, and then there's anxiety. I mean, it's just kind of, we're built into it as humans. And when I am fully understanding that I am not the one in charge and in control, that either we're working in a community or somebody else is the leader, in this case Jesus,
Yeah.
then it's much easier for me to take a step back and say, wow, okay, you're not in control, you're not everything, so stop it. And it works for me.
Yeah. You're not everything, but you are something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really dedicated
Big,
to the fact that, it's like one person does not make a community. And I am real
yeah.
dedicated to being in community. And, community has highs and lows and, stresses and stuff. So I think that
Yeah.
accepting that as it's a bit of a growth also. You walk into a meeting, it's kind of dark. You don't know it's going to come up, but
Yeah.
our, our baptismal covenant, when we're going to love each other, then that requires that I go in with a frame of, that we're all contributors, and I don't,
Yeah.
I don't have to be in charge or, whatever. So yeah, it's working together, it's that important, necessary piece.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I've done, Eileen, because I had to get off the video because it was glitching. I opened the door of my little office in my backyard, and I've set my chair up so I can look out into the garden at the canopy and the chickens and the dog and the trees and see the light kind of streaming in, and it was really nice kind of change of scene. I'm just kind of like looking out of the garden while we're chatting.
Nice.
It's nice. Yeah. I wonder if we might read the text one more time, and this time ask ourselves a different question, which is, what is God asking us to do now in the light of this reading? And I wonder if you might help me out by reading the reading for me, because
Sure.
it might be easier for you to do it there where you are.
Yeah. Excuse me. Jesus took with him Peter and John and James, and they went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Not knowing what he said, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent, and in those days told no one of the things they had seen. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then a man from the crowd shouted, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son. He is my only child." Suddenly a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks. It convulses him until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. While he was coming, the demon dashed him to the ground in convulsions. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God.
Mm. What's God asking to do now in the light of this reading, Eileen?
Walking into darkness, I don't even have to walk into it by myself. I can reach my hand out and say, okay, Jesus, let's look at this together and go with him. And I forget that. And I think that's what it's asking me to remember.
Good. Yeah. I'm going to jokingly often say God's asking me to write a sermon for Sunday, which I'll work on. But I also think that too, being willing to go into the darkness of prayer sometimes, even though it's slightly scary, and encounter God there in the person of Jesus and recognize that I'm loved by him, and recommitting to that and doing that more fully. So thank you, Eileen, for sharing, and thank you for joining. Thank you for joining Gospel Preview. I do want to end by saying, for you and for anybody that might be listening to this at home, I'm just going to publish this the way it is, even though there was a mess in the middle. I think it'll be fine. But I am going on sabbatical, coming up the 9th of April through to the 9th of July. And that's been announced now at the annual meeting, and we're just getting used to it. Gospel Preview will continue during that time, being led by Megan Anderson, Garton, and Alex Leach, our vice dean and our director of formation. They'll carry on doing it. So Gospel Preview is going to carry on at noon through the period of my sabbatical. I just wanted to let you know that.
And I'd like to say, for anybody listening, you're wonderfully welcome to join us. We would like that.
Yes.
If you go to the calendar on the main page of the website and scroll down to the Gospel Preview, there's a click on the Zoom and come be there with us. It's great.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Okay, should we say a prayer?
Please.
God be with you.
Also with you.
Loving God, go with us into the rest of this week. As we face the ups and downs of life, as we face the mountaintops and the valleys, I pray that you might be with us in both, and that we might really know that you are present with us in both. We commit ourselves to going with you into the sunlight and into the shadows, to do the work that you called us to do, to serve the people you've called us to serve. We ask this for the sake of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Bye.
Thank you, Eileen. God bless.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.